This is your number one source for all things comics, movies, and pop culture. It's Geek Week with Chris and Nick.
You're listening to Geek Week.
I'm Chris Natale.
And I'm Nick Rotundo.
To all those listening, thank you for joining our discussion.
And if you would like to hear any of our old episodes, be sure to check out our Facebook page, where our YouTube page is also linked. We've decided to switch over from SoundCloud to YouTube, so all of our old shows are up on there.
This week's topic is the golden age of comics, where everything began, I'd say.
Basically, the invention of the wheel of comics.
Yeah, it's amazing because I want to say this early just to get out of the way, but some people who are so-called fans of comics are like, oh, I don't like older comics, but I do like the new ones. And I'm just like, but do you know that the new ones kind of had the foundation of the new ones are based on the old ones?
Exactly. Like, okay,
somewhat.
let's be honest here. Some of them are kind of like cheesy. Like,
yeah.
Especially next week's show, we'll get into that. But, but like,
I'm not telling you to love them, but I'm telling you at least respect like the origin of comics. Like,
exactly.
Like respect it. You don't have to love it. You don't have to read a bunch of like golden age stuff. If you don't like it, that's fine.
Yeah.
You have your own like personal opinion on it. Cool. But don't just trash it because it's older and it's not like newer stuff today.
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, everybody knows that I'm a big Spider-Man fan. Like, I'll be honest, the newer ones I'm not a big fan of because, well, they're going in a different direction than I would have liked to see. But, like, when I was growing up, the newer ones were always my favorite because it was new. It was something that was modern day. It was something I could relate to. However, I enjoy, like, the way early 90s than the 80s comics with, like, McFarlane, and I even did pick up. I mean, I have a reprint of Amazing Fantasy 15. So like I do appreciate the old stuff. Like it's just
it also builds the foundation of the characters and people and like things that we love today. Like you got to see, oh, so they did this back then with Spider-Man, but they changed it nowadays to this. Like it's cool to look at that. I feel like.
So before comic books existed, which was like early 20th century, comics were actually the first comics were 2 to 3 panels in newspapers. So no books, nothing along those lines. Nothing existed except, hey, let's go read like Garfield and stuff on like the funnies.
Hey man, they got to start somewhere. Start small and build up.
I mean, I still every now and then I find myself going into the newspaper and, hey, look, it's the funnies page. I'm going to go read it. Like,
that's the first page I'd go to in a newspaper.
We are not children. We're children at heart.
Yeah, definitely children at heart.
So today's topic is the golden age of comics, the original stuff. We're talking 1938 to 1955. This is World War II. This is a little bit before World War II as well, and as well as after. So it's right around that era where like a lot of stuff went down.
Yeah.
And of course we have we're going to talk a little bit. We're probably going to give them the modern day names when we're just discussing because it's just easier to talk about. However, back in the day, Marvel Comics and DC Comics weren't actually called Marvel and DC.
Yeah, I think Marvel was
Timely Comics,
and it was all. I feel like it was. I read somewhere where it was called Atlas too, which was cool.
Yeah, I mean, each of these characters that are now owned by like Marvel and DC, they were all brought in like different comic book series. So like it was different companies. So like you'll see, of course, we'll get into like where Superman comes from, where Batman comes from. Like they all. It's not just like, for example. Captain America, it was Timely Comics, but like not every Marvel character is going to be in Timely Comics at that time. And then they all just come together and they form Marvel. So let's get it started off. You're a big DC fan. I'll let you kick it off.
All right. Well, in June 1938, DC released Action Comics #1. This book goes for a lot of money on the market nowadays. I think
millions of dollars.
Yeah, it was, and it's like Superman is I feel like I've seen this somewhere online, like some of my sources that I was looking up. It said he was like the first superhero, like the first.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
and like the people still know him today. Like he's the most recognizable today.
Oh yeah,
like,
I mean, so when they decided to start doing comic books, in I want to say like, well, this has got to be early 1938. They're saying, okay, we're running out of like reprints, so they've been taking the panels from the newspapers and putting them in books. Which an example of like a big popular one was Funnies on Parade, which was like a bunch of different of the panels put together in a big book, and they would sell those for like 10 cents. So yeah, 10 cents. Imagine if a comic book was 10 cents today. Like I'd be buying 20 a week.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I gotta agree with that.
So with that, they started running out of ideas. They were like, okay, we're like out of reprints. We're getting to the fact that like whatever's new is going to be put in the book too. We don't want that. So what do? They start looking for people who have ideas, and they start making up comic books. So that's where Superman comes into play.
Yeah, it was cool. I guess I thought it was funny because Superman would have like a criminal shoot at him only to take his gun, fire it back at the bad guy, and stop the bullet last second just to scare him. And I'm like,
that
nowadays,
is so not him now.
Yeah, nowadays I'm just like, I could see Clark doing that, but that's like at the same time, I with the modernized comic version of him, it's funny to look at him now and look at him back then, because now he would just be like,
well, now he's like this like stereotyped Superman is the big Boy Scout, the big blue Boy Scout, as Batman likes to call him. So I mean, yes, there are some other things in him that besides Boy Scout, a lot of fans would be up in arms if I just said he was a Boy Scout, but he's stereotyped as the Boy Scout. So like seeing that is like completely different than what he is now. I mean, Batman had changes too. I mean, we'll talk about that in a sec, but staying on Superman being the first superhero ever, this is what got people to start buying comics. I mean, they were for kids originally. It wasn't like for the average reader. This isn't for like nowadays where anybody can go buy a comic. Like I remember Stan Lee saying once, I watched a documentary, he said, when I first became like part of the comic book industry and I would go out or I would meet like a woman or I would go out on a date or just go out and socialize, they'd say, oh, what do you do? He didn't want to say he was a comic book writer because then, you know, you get laughed at for that. So then you do. You tell him, oh, I'm Stan Lee, I work in comics. Everybody's like, oh my God, you're awesome.
Yeah,
so,
you made my childhood.
Same. So, I mean, with that...
Along with Jack Kirby. I'm just,
oh, yes.
Just gotta throw that in there.
So, with that, I mean, back then, they would say, like, oh, I work in, like, writing or something like that. Like, whatever it is, I'm an author. Like, just, it was a children's hobby.
Yeah.
So, Superman was supposed to be, like, this, obviously an alien, but he represented the average day man who could do anything, though. Like this is what really gets me, and I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent for a couple of seconds, but like this is what drives me insane, because you look back at Action Comics #1. Yes, Superman's a little bit buff. They have to make him look buff, but he's not jacked out of his mind. That's why I have a problem with like the Henry Cavill type of Superman, where like they have to make him bigger than Batman, like they have to make him like almost the Hulk. Let's make him huge. He's supposed to be an average guy. He's Clark Kent who works in a newspaper. Like, is a newspaper guy jacked out of his mind? And like, oh yeah, he's not Superman at all. Like, and not only that, but like the fact that like all of his feats, faster than a speeding bullet, able to leap, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Like, these were feats that like you would look at and you would go, he's a hero. He's super, like he's Superman. So the fact that he was a normal guy who looked like a normal guy and was able to like take one hand and lift a car in the air, like now you look at it and like people can actually lift cars and stuff because they get really big. But I mean, it just, that's what irks me. It's like that's why I like the Supergirl Superman a lot more. He's happy, he smiles, and he's an average build.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand where you're coming from with that. At the same time, like I totally get the whole like you have a big rip guy at the Daily Planet and just sitting there with glasses and you're like, huh? All right.
Oh, you do CrossFit?
Like, I mean, people can get big, but if he's like really, if he's obnoxiously larger than everybody else in the room, then something's like kind of like hinting at that. But I like Superman being like a natural size to everybody else, but like still being able to do all those incredible things.
Agreed. So obviously after Superman, we get into Batman. He was released in May 1939 in Detective Comics number 27. And this is a whole completely different Batman.
Was it May or was it March?
I could have sworn it was May. I found it online on Wikipedia, so
okay, because
Wikipedia gets changed by people. I don't know.
Okay, it's fine.
Don't quote me on that, guys, if you're listening. But yeah. So, but this is what really got me. I was like, I always thought Batman had that moral code or whatever. Originally, he would use guns all the time and snap people's necks.
There was a short, there's an animated short by Bruce Timm. It's on YouTube.
Is that the 75th anniversary thing?
It was cool because he showed like the older Batman with the gloves, with the pointed ears and the
giant ears,
the giant ears and everything, and fighting Solomon Grundy and using a plane that actually shot bullets. And I'm just like, and like it wasn't even like the bat wasn't even bat shaped. I think it was just like an actual plane where he's just shooting.
And like down. I think of the wings were like kind of like cut out.
Yeah, kind of.
But that was really it.
And I just think it's cool to look back at that, and then we'll get him now. And I'm just like, okay,
he's come a long way.
He really has. And like, I
mean, all of
it's funny because like even in the movies, he uses guns. The Batman v Superman, he did use guns, and he did snap necks in that one scene in the when he was
the nightmares
in the nightmare scene.
That's nightmares.
And I'm just like, that's so like to me that like that's I feel like that's a little nod to the older one, even if they weren't trying to do it, they still did.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, okay, like it shows you like creative differences aside. Like
exactly, I saw this.
It's
one
cool
picture.
To see different kinds of adaptations of Batman.
The one picture I saw while I was doing research for this show was Batman coming down like gliding with his cape out and just like I don't know if it was one or two legs just kicked this guy so hard that his neck snapped. I was like, oh, cool, okay.
I actually really like Batman's moral code. I feel like that puts it kind of like gives him more character to me.
Exactly. So because of Batman and Superman, you get like all those people. This ushered in other characters. First, we're going to talk about DC, mostly because we've been talking about DC, and they kind of came first, surprisingly. As much as Marvel is more popular, I think, and like viewing-wise, just looking at the movie universe, kind of comics too. Nowadays, it's kind of like iffy because you don't know who's doing well. But DC came first. So we have The Flash, which originally was Jay Garrick. He came in Flash Comics number 1, January 1940. We talked about Batman. We got Robin, who appeared a couple issues later, Detective Comics number 38, which was in April of 1940. Wonder Woman, which was All-Star Comics number 8, December 1941. Green Lantern, which I believe that wasn't even Hal Jordan. That was
Alan Scott.
That's it. Yeah. And that was the Weakness of Wood.
Weakness of Wood and the color yellow. And you just think of a number 2 pencil actually hurting the Green Lantern. That's what I think of it. And like, but then again, dude, it's all for laughs. And you like I said, respect the older forms of the characters. Respect the original characters, because like, without them, you wouldn't have Hal Jordan. You wouldn't have Jon Stewart. You wouldn't have any of the newer Lanterns. Guy Gardner, Kyle Rayner. You would just and it's cool because I think they do. Nowadays they're doing twists on like Alan Scott and Jay Garrick, and they're like in different books.
Yeah, I mean, like there's obviously how they transition into Barry Allen, which we'll get into next week, as well as like just other heroes too. Obviously, the whole multiverse was like a big thing that came in towards the next show's Silver Age and stuff. But the fact that like now still they have, even in the show, I'm sure they're probably going to do it in the movie at some point, whether it's a sequel or not or whatever. But in the comics, they have interactions with Barry and Jay and Wally West and Kid Flash and the other Kid Flash, which was his son. blanket on his name, but then of course Bart Allen is his grandson, which is Impulse. So like they all have interaction, which is awesome.
There's a cool just talking about all these older characters of like Flash, Jay Garrick, Alan Scott. There's a cool episode in the Justice League animated series, which is really cool because it showed they like there's this like person who made up this whole other like universe kind of thing with the older people,
Right.
the older characters. And I thought that was awesome because like people should know about them, and like the Justice League show incorporated them well.
Same with also now Flash has been doing like I don't know if you're caught up, are you? Or
Well, I well not caught up as far two. I missed the last two episodes because
okay, so
yeah.
I'm gonna spoil one little thing. Obviously, they brought in another Harrison Wells from another Earth. They went all the way to Earth 19. So there's now up to like 19 Earths that they know of.
Tom Cavanaugh is a good actor, so
Yes.
I don't wonder why they kept him on. He's fantastic.
So HR, as he's like to be called,
HR.
yeah, Harrison or HR for Harrison or Harry. So basically, they go through each like Earth and they're looking through, and you see like different timelines where like one's Western, one's British, one's that or that, this or that, and like. When he goes to talk to Jay Garrick in like Earth, I think it's 3 or 4, I forget which one. I think it's Earth 3. When he runs back in time or whatever, and Jay grabs him a couple episodes back, we see the fact that like it's an older like world, and that's what I love about it. Like they're actually doing like the JSL or JSA, I should say. I'm sorry, the Justice League or whatever of. America or whatever.
Just Leave America.
That's it, JLA. Yeah, you can tell I'm a Marvel fan. But
okay.
So going on, we have the Atom, which originally wasn't what is the Brandon
Ray
Routh?
Palmer.
Yeah, Ray Palmer. It wasn't Ray Palmer. It was actually Al Pratt. He was in All American Comics number 19, October 1940. Hawkman was in the same comic as the first Flash. So Jay Garrick and Hawkman actually teamed up together in the first issue of The Flash. I thought that was pretty cool. So that's in Flash Comics number 1, January 1940. Green Arrow was in More Fun Comics number 73, November 1941.
I'm glad that the titles got more creative after.
Yeah, More Fun Comics. I can see like Stephen Amell like killing people. You have failed the city. More fun, guys. And then of course Aquaman was teaming up with Green Arrow in More Fun Comics number 73 in 1941 in November. So I mean, as we said before, this was very much for kids. So hence the kid sidekicks and simple artwork. Nowadays you look at even I think it goes into the Silver and Bronze Age. When you look at like Doctor Strange, which is going to be airing, which is going into theaters this Friday. So, which I'm happy that we're seeing. But but they actually have stated that the movie took reference to like the original Doctor Strange comics, and what they're doing is they looked at panels of Doctor Strange where he's like standing in the astral plane. And you see like all these weird shapes and colors and stuff. And they actually like took that and CGI'd it so it looks almost exactly like that exact panel. So the astral plane is actually comic book accurate, if you want to say.
Okay. That's
so
cool.
I was like,
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
So like now that we go into like newer comics, the artwork gets a lot more detailed. Like,
there's artists out there that
DKR,
do amazing work.
Yeah. Like the intricate, like Killer Croc, for example, all those scales, like it's so intricate.
Yeah, there's a lot of actually a lot of like if you go to New York Comic Con, what I did with my girlfriend and my other friend, and we went to Artist Alley and we met a bunch of different artists that we really enjoyed, and it was cool because each of them have their own identity in a way because they all draw differently. But they all have like a common, I guess, like they love what they do, and it's cool to see that, and they add their own kind of personality to it, and I don't know, I love that about artists.
Yeah, same. But like, look at Action Comics number 1, like Superman's just like little outlines of like a face and like dots for eyes or whatever, and then there you go, that's Superman, guys. So, I love how it's progressed over time. And so World War II comes into play now, We have World War II hitting, and Marvel comes along, Timely Comics, and someone takes over, Chris. And that man is red, white, and blue spandex galore.
Captain America.
Steve Rogers. So Captain America comes into play, which leads to many other superheroes, not just Captain America, including Superman. I think even, I want to say, Namor. Like, there's other pictures that I saw on this video that I was watching for research, and it's all of them fighting Nazis and Japanese soldiers for World War II. It was a lot of propaganda to get, like, people on the Allies side to get them to buy war bonds and help out America. So the fact that, like, little kids are running around with Captain America shields and made out of, like, garbage lids and stuff.
Hey, Benny did that for one of it for his.
I love the fact that they actually reference that in the first Avenger movie. Like, at the end, they buy Captain America #1, where he's punching Adolf Hitler in the face, and the little kids are running around with the garbage can lid and painted as the shield. I was like, oh my god, this is such a beautiful reference. So of course, Captain America is in Captain America Comics #1, which was owned by Timely. Which was March 1941. And then one of your... are you a big Fantastic Four fan? Or I know you're not a big fan of the movies.
I mean, I do like the Human Torch because he's an elemental, like, in a way. Like, I do like the Human Torch, though.
So Human Torch came next with Marvel Comics #1. This is where I guess Marvel's really coming into play. They bought out Timely, or renamed it. And this was in October 1939. And then Namor the Submariner, Motion Picture Funnies Weekly, April 1939. Like, that's so weird.
Well, comics were known as funnies, hence the word comics. Like, you think comics. I've talked to people who don't really read anything like that, and I've said, I talked about comics like maybe once, and be like, you mean comedians? I'm like, no,
not at all.
Which is why I feel like they use the word funnies a lot and more fun and things like that, because comics were, like, back then I feel like were funny and, like, just entertaining, and they weren't really taken seriously, I guess.
Exactly. So the fact for me, yes, I'm a Marvel fan. Yes, I've always been a Spider-Man fan, but there will always be a place in my heart for Captain America. Like, I mean, I'll be honest. I drooled over the Raimi Spider-Man series. I drooled over Iron Man 1. And then once I heard Captain America was coming in, I dragged my dad to the movie theater. And actually, so... Fun fact, I'm sure, Dad, you're listening, or you're going to listen online, so you'll have a kick out of this. I know he hates this stuff. I know he hates comic books. So the fact that I dragged him to the Raimi series, he was kind of okay with that, I guess. This was when I was younger, too. Mm-hmm. So, but this is like middle school, high school, whatever it was. First Avenger came out. I dragged my dad to it, and he was like, you know what? I really like this movie. And I mean, both of my grandfathers fought in World War II, so I'm sure that had probably something to do with it. So, I mean, with that, I think everybody has a place in their heart.
I mean, I dragged my grandma to CVS to get me that Spider-Man, like the first Spider-Man movie on VHS.
That was great.
So I could totally understand that. And, like, my grandfather would watch stuff like that with me. He might not enjoy it, but he did enjoy, like, cowboys and, like, Indians and stuff like that. So he did enjoy, like, some of the older Batman films.
That's what I love. Like, you find the weirdest things, like, when you're talking to, like, your family members, like, oh, my grandfather likes Star Wars? I didn't even know that. I went to Star Wars 7 with my friends, and my grandfather was like, oh, you went? Oh, I would have went with you. I was like, why didn't you tell me this?
Yeah, my grandfather liked The Shadow, like, on the radio.
Yeah.
Only The Shadow knows, kind of. And he, like, and as soon as he saw Batman, he was like, Batman was inspired by The Shadow, wasn't he? And I was like, yep.
Yeah. So with that, after the war, this is where things turn for the worse. And it kind of stinks to see this because, I mean, you kind of hope that, like, characters like Captain America, like Superman, they can never die. But apparently, right after World War II, superheroes died out for a little bit since people were tired of the fighting and, you know, tired of war and all this stuff. And so this led to more Western comics, more humor comics, horror comics, the Tales of Suspense, all that stuff. And, of course, teen comics like Archie, stuff like that. Those come into reign. So this is around like the early 1950s, and that kind of just ends the golden age and begins the silver age of comics. And I hate this stuff. I hate it, but it also brought along the Comics Code of the Comics Code Authority. And that's why we have the Silver Age, because of the Comics Code Authority.
Hey man, like, I mean, I understand like people's like whole, I guess their problems with the Comics Code Authority, but I also you got to look at both sides in a way. Like,
they've become so lenient now too.
Oh yeah,
like look at Walking Dead. It's an F-bomb, another curse left and right, and you have heads being beaten in and stuff like that. Like,
and back then it was a time where these things weren't okay. And
exactly.
I guess that's why. And that you just got to look at it that way. Like we're not from back then. We have no idea what's going on, and we like learn about it, but. It's like, I guess it's another thing like where you can have a problem with the Comics Code Authority if you want, but like just respect that it happened and get over it. You know?
Yeah, I mean it ushered in a whole new era of like, which we'll get into a little bit like way later, but like of transitions of characters, and it like led into even the Bronze Age and like even transitioned them more into more psychological stuff, which was great. So like the transitions over time of like each age have brought in a whole new twist to every character, not just like Batman, Joker, or Superman, like Captain America. Like we see everything, and that's just awesome. Obviously, you can tell we have such appreciation for anything to do with comic books, any type of art form, like just even like just watching whether it's like a TED Talk or whatever about like the philosophy behind a character or whatever. Like I love that stuff.
Philosophy is cool. I gotta agree with you there, because like you think of all these things about what goes into a character, like how many different things go into a character. I guess like their psyche in a way, and things like that. And it's cool because the writers kind of show you over time like how these characters change in either mind, like what decisions they make, what decisions they choose not to make. All that. I think that's interesting, and I love books like that. I have an X-Men and Philosophy book that I really enjoyed reading, and it talks about the similarities between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and then like how they compare to Professor X and Magneto. And I think that's cool because I'm just like, you're comparing like people in history to comic book characters, and you could see the similarities easily.
Oh yeah, so. I mean, also there was very much also not just a reference to like the whole African American like type of history, but it also references, I mean, it blatantly mentions the fact that Magneto was in Germany when the Nazis took over. He has the numbers tattooed on him. So not only that, like it talks about the Holocaust, but like philosophy-wise, it talks about the Holocaust too, because of the fact that like how they're seen as outsiders and stuff like that. They're mutants. Everybody hates mutants apparently. So like I love that aspect too.
Yeah, I definitely gotta agree with you there, and I'm actually glad superheroes died out like in that time, because it's cool. Comics for different there should be a comic for every like genre, I feel, because no one's gonna want to read superheroes all the time. No one's gonna want to read horror all the time. People might want to read comedy, things like that, and I feel like there's a comic out there for everybody that they like to read. And like even if you're not into superheroes, you could easily get into comics regardless, because there's Image, there's Dark Horse, there's a bunch of different publishers besides DC and Marvel, even though they're the two big ones. Like you just got to look at the other independent publishers as well, because
exactly. I mean, with that, like you have also the idea that like if you did have if superheroes never died out, there's the possibility that they could have died out way later, like the Western. Like, we don't really see that many Western movies, Western stories anymore. But, like, everybody's thriving over these superhero movies. So the fact that, like, people are like, oh, are superheroes going to be oversaturated and die out like the Western? Like, I don't think so, just because of the fact that you can relate to it rather than, like, the Western. However, you never know.
Oversaturated. I mean... I can't get into big in the oversaturation thing, because I kind of...
Oh, yeah.
As a fan of comic books and superheroes alike... I think if a comic book movie is going to be done right, and especially with superheroes,
use references.
At least do them every couple years. Like, don't do them every year where you're expecting one to come out every single year. Because, and I get selling, I get money, I get all that. Like, they want to make money. But, like, if you're going to put something out, make it good quality, and, like, let people wait for it. Make people wait.
Well,
good things come to those who wait, in a sense.
I saw episode 7 for Star Wars, right? Well, this was last year. This came out. I went to the movie theaters. I got home the night before, and then I ran over to my buddy's house the next day, and we, like, binge watched 1 through 6 or as many as we could, and then saw 7 that night. And honestly, I got left that movie theater. I was like, I want to see 8. And like that's what they're supposed to do with their movies. They're supposed to like get you to want to do things, but like think about it this way, like, do you really want them like, okay, let's just give you the storylines and everything? Like, no, you want to see that and like have it like made over time. Things take time to make. Good
things take time to make.
Exactly.
Quality is important.
I mean,
not quantity.
will I see Rogue One? Probably. My friends will probably drag me to it at some point, but I'm not as excited for that as I am as 8.
I can understand that.
So with that, let's get into some facts about the golden age of comic books. According to some sources online, evidence of comics can be traced as far back as the ancient Egyptian Empire. For example, the tomb of the artisan and scribe Mena is covered with comic murals depicting Egyptian life. What?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Oh, that was pretty cool.
Chris found that. I had wanted to put that into the script, and honestly, like, so technically, wouldn't that not be a comic book though? I mean, like okay, it's a comic panel in the sense that like it's depicting like little it's just little drawings.
They said that in the They said that in the article, I believe, because it just said like even though it's not a comic book, it's still like it's still drawings of a comic like thing. So I thought it was pretty cool to find out. Also, another cool thing is the site said comics owe a lot of the printing press created by Johann Gutenberg around 1440.
Since boy Gutenberg.
It started the kickoff for drawings and kind of like works like that to speak to the common people. So that was.
I love that. I mean, like
I just had a test with him on it, so that was pretty.
All of a sudden, like Gutenberg just sticks in your head.
Yeah, he's been in my head.
Every time I think of that, though, I think of like American Dad and like the Steve Gutenberg. He pretends to be Gutenberg to make fake IDs for people on the show. But yeah, I mean, that's awesome. The fact that like the moment printing press comes out, like, I mean, you got to think like, wouldn't one of the original comic books also be considered like a political comic, like the political?
Well, they started as propaganda. So yeah,
exactly. So I'd think at least. Comes from that. I'm happy about that. I mean, if it wasn't for like political comedy, then you wouldn't have Superman either.
It's very true. The next thing we found is that comics have been in existence since the end of the 19th century, but it was after the Depression that the popularity of newspaper cartoons expanded into a major industry.
I mean, that was stated before, but I again can't get enough of that. I mean, You gotta at least.
It's just cool to see the history behind comics. Like,
exactly. You gotta at least like acknowledge what they came from. Like
respect is
exactly.
Respect.
Like when if you ever win an award or whatever, you always like give reference to, like, you always say thank you to my parents, to everyone who supported me. Like it's like comic books are winning an award and they're saying thank you printing press, thank you Gutenberg, thank you like panels in the newspaper. Like I love that stuff. Of course, Captain Marvel proved to be one of the most popular superhero comics of the Golden Age, regularly outselling the Adventures of Superman during the 1940s. That I did not know.
Yeah, well, I feel like the comics nowadays should probably learn from the 1940s because there's no Shazam Rebirth and like
this needs to happen, guys.
Captain Marvel was an awesome character.
Yeah,
like, Billy Batson's great.
They're talking about doing the movie and like have Dwayne The Rock Johnson as
as Black Adam.
Black Adam,
dude, I can't wait.
Yes,
I'm so excited.
I mean, would you put a wig on him though? I'd put a wig on him. He's got to have hair.
I mean, I get that, but like if you played Injustice, there's an alternate costume where he's bald. So I mean, hair is important, I guess. But like if they don't do it, I'm not going to be like, oh, it's not Black Adam. Where's his hair?
No, I feel you on that. I mean, who would you cast as Shazam? I know there's a guy who you ever see the movie Dodgeball?
Yeah.
Not the guy that plays Batman with Bat in the Sun. The other guy, I think his name's like Blazer or Laser in the movie. It's like Brandon something is his name. He's a very small actor. He like hasn't done a lot of big
Brandon
roles.
Morale?
Yeah. He hasn't done a lot of big roles, but he's been in a bunch of movies. I think that guy's got the chops to be Shazam, at least adult Shazam.
I don't know about fan casting. Like, I know fan casting is cool. I always like to see what other people predict, but I never want to fan cast myself. Like myself and looking at these people because I'm like I don't want to pick because I don't know
'Cause you
every actor. I
appreciate
don't
what
know
people do.
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
like I guess the creative differences or the kind of thing.
Maybe that's why I'm always upset when things get announced.
I mean,
because I always fan cast. I'm like,
I just
this guy
wanna,
would be awesome as this.
I don't care who plays the character as long as they get Shazam and Billy Shazam / Billy Batson right.
Well, yeah. I mean, like for
You know?
example, remember how I was like talking to you? I think it was like 2 years ago. Was it 2? It was sophomore year when they announced that they were going to do a new Spider-Man, and I was just pulling for Dylan O'Brien, and that's all I wanted. And then I found out he got kicked out because he was too old, and they were going to go with either Asa Butterfield, Tom Holland was on the list, and there was like someone else too. I think it was like Logan Lerman or something like that. And I don't know who I like said. I think I wanted Butterfield. And then finally they announced it was Tom Holland. I was like, who the heck is this guy? And then I saw Civil War, and I was like, all right, I'm good with this.
Yeah, exactly. Because he did the character like right. He did the
yeah.
character the way Spider-Man should be done, I feel.
Have you seen his Instagram posts? Like even before Civil War, he was posting pictures of like, thanks mom for saving this. And it's like his baby Halloween costume when he was Spider-Man. It's like the t-shirt's like the size of like my sleeve of my t-shirt. I was like, this is adorable and awesome at the same time. Like I love seeing how like actors are fans of like what they do. Like Ben Affleck was a Batman fan before he was even like considered to be Daredevil or Batman. Kevin Smith has been to his house and says he has a Bat Cave panic room in his mansion. I'm sold there.
I think Ben Affleck's gonna kill the standalone Batman movie.
Oh
It's
yeah,
gonna be
without a
great.
doubt. The fact that he's like actually like he's telling like DC and Warner Brothers, I don't care how much you try to push and pressure me. I'm making this the right way. Like I'm doing my research. I'm writing this. And
It takes a lot of cojones to
he's
tell
not-
DC and
yeah,
Warner Brothers that.
yeah. He's saying like I love the fact that he's telling them that like I'm not releasing like a draft or anything until I know it's 100% what I want to see.
I respect him for that because
Yeah.
he wants it to be good quality, which is what I was saying about before. Like if you want to make a good movie, like a superhero or like any other fictional character, do your research. Like actually make the movie to be out, to at least be inspired by the source material and like close to it as you can, or with your creativity, like creative differences, so on, whatever.
There is one thing we know though.
But just like take your time with
we
the movie.
do know one thing about the movie. It's going to be called The Batman.
Which is fine.
I love that.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the Batman.
Well, because like as much as he's always been called Batman in comics or like the Dark Knight and stuff like that, like it's always been Batman as the title of the comics, or like Detective Comics or whatever you want to call it. But you look inside the comics when they're talking, like the bad guys always refer to him as, "Oh, have you ever seen the Batman? I'm scared the Batman's gonna come."
Or the Bat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the title.
Exactly.
But moving on to
yeah.
is it off that tangent, that really long tangent. So even though superhero comics were top sellers, other genres emerged during the Golden Age. So like horror and crime, like Nick and I were talking about before, were popular. Notably, The Spirit, a masked detective who captured villains and dispensed justice. There was a movie made for The Spirit. And it was like the Sin City. It was done in black and white. It was really
Frank
cool.
Miller, right? Frank Miller.
It was Frank Miller.
Did he write that with him?
I'm pretty sure
I
he
think he wrote it.
He wrote that and Sin City and all that. So I thought
A lot of people were not fans.
I didn't see The Spirit, but I wanted to. But I'm like, it's just cool to see that it was back in the day, like Golden Age comics. Now, like recent modern age, it's a movie.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first one, from what I've heard, was okay, and then the second one wasn't very good, and a lot of people are saying that like Frank Miller should never write for another movie again or whatever, like because
some people are better
yeah.
comic book writers
Exactly.
or writers, like book writers, than movie writers.
Have you seen what Frank Miller actually said about what his Batman movie would be like? He actually came out and comicbook.com reported this and said like what he said. A lot of people were commenting saying like, no, just be quiet, Miller. Go back to comics, or don't even like write comics. It was bad. Like a lot of people were like saying bad stuff about
that's crazy.
it. But honestly, I kind of liked what he was doing. He was talking about how he actually was writing a Batman movie at one point. It was going to happen, but then like it just kind of just pushed it away. And it was kind of like Batman Year One in a sense, where like it was from the roots. It was an origin story again, but it was like the tellings of almost Year One, and that's why he like really loved doing Year One when he wrote it. He said that it was a lot of like getting rid of the toys, the gadgets, getting rid of all this stuff. It was he hates Superman, Frank Miller. I don't know why, he just does. But he talks about how like Superman has all these powers and everything, and then Batman has to rely on his like strength and his will and like his combat skills, like his hand-to-hand combat. So the fact that like he said he wanted to make a movie where it was all based around like hand-to-hand combat, whether he like in year one where he loses his utility belt and then has to work around what he's got, and that seemed cool to me.
It's a cool idea.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of get where Frank Miller's coming from, but I feel like in a world with Batman, you kind of need a Superman, and in a world with like Superman, you kind of need Batman. It's like they go hand in hand. They're like yin and yang in a sense.
I think that's why. I mean, in my opinion, I loved Keaton. I loved Keaton as a Batman. I'll be honest. We what did we grow up on? We grew up on like Clooney, unfortunately, and we grew up on Christopher Bale.
When I was a kid, I loved like Clooney, like in that whole, because I was like, oh, this is so cheesy. Like I loved, as a kid, you're like laughing at it, and then like you get older, I'm like, wow, this is pretty terrible.
Yeah. So thanks, Schumacher, but
he apologized for it.
I know. Let's push that aside.
Let's move that dead horse aside.
So like you grow up with those, but for me, like. I forget who showed me it. It was like maybe one of my friends or like a family member. They showed me the 1989 Batman Keaton, and my parents actually told me that like they saw that in the movie theaters when they were like dating. They like brought that. My dad took my mom to go see Batman. I was like, "That's awesome! You are awesome! Now I see why I'm your son." So like I grew up like even though I grew up with Clooney and Christopher Bale. Keaton, in my mind, was always the best Batman.
You said Christopher Bale.
Yeah, no, Keaton was always my best.
I know you said Christopher Bale.
God, thanks, Christopher Nolan.
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale.
Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, so
I feel like we're going with Batman for hours.
I love Keaton, and then the fact that like now I think the fact that they're kind of just linking together all the universes, all the characters, and they're actually having a yin and a yang with Superman and Batman, like you said. It's finally becoming like a whole universe. It's becoming like a structured like settlement in a sense where Batman is working with Superman. It's like, okay, Keaton
they could be brothers in another
awesome.
Life.
Yeah, like Keaton was awesome. Let's be honest here. But like, imagine if Keaton and Christopher Reeve work together. I mean, that's probably another topic when we want to discuss Superman Lives, written by Kevin Smith, which never happened. Definitely check out that documentary, The Return of Superman, or The Death of Superman Lives. Great stuff there. But I mean, it talked about, he actually came out and said in one of the scenes when I kill Superman with Doomsday, Keaton's Batman comes on screen on a big TV like Times Square and like has words, says a eulogy to the people of Metropolis and also all around the world. So I was like, oh my God, he was trying to build the Justice League, which was awesome. So the fact that like even Kevin Smith wanted that from day one, you need it.
You do. You definitely do.
But so yeah, like horror, crime. I mean, The Spirit was awesome. I read a couple comics of that like way back in the day, just to see what it was about. And you know, he's kind of cool. He reminds me of like a Batman, Daredevil type of thing too. So it was interesting to read. But you know, science fiction and Western themed comics were also like the newer styles coming into the comic book industry. Their storytelling started to appear, and then of course the teen genre was also gaining interest. There was a comic strip featuring everyone's favorite redhead teenager named Archie Andrews. Oh God! And of course,
1941.
I mean, yeah, 1941, man. Of course, they're doing that whole.
And the company changed its name to Archie Comics in 1946, just because of how popular Archie was.
Oh yeah,
I mean, still is popular today.
They're doing a TV show for a live action TV show,
and they're doing another comic, I think, with the girlfriend or two girl characters.
Yeah, Betty and I'm forgetting Veronica.
Yeah, they're doing a comic right now of that, and it's still popular to this day. So it just shows.
I still do have like Archie comics somewhere, like in my house. I don't know where I put them, whether I got rid of them or, God forbid, I'd kill myself for that. I'd really be angry at myself for that. But you know, Archie's kind of cool. I mean, yeah, it's corny and cheesy. It's that like 50s teenage stuff.
People eat that up.
Yeah.
Some people eat that up. Kick, so everybody has their thing that they like. But yeah, as we said before, after the war, like the superhero genre kind of like lost its like steam in a sense, and it marked the end of the golden age. It left the golden age left a huge mark on comic books with like just the characters that they like have remaining popular for almost 70 years later. Batman, Superman, Archie, like anything like that.
I mean,
like,
you have
all
comics
those
with
characters.
Archie that like over the years he played in a band with Kiss. Like Archie meets Kiss. Like Archie meets like I think they did one with Scooby Doo too. Like there's all over the place. Like these characters are iconic. You go anywhere in the world, you show them a Superman symbol, a Captain America symbol, a Batman symbol, a Spider-Man symbol, if even they'll recognize it. It's like the McDonald's arches. Everybody knows what it is.
Mm-hmm. And one of the like most important, like I think, impacts of the golden age from what I've saw online, it was on PBS's website, which was really cool to find out because these are a lot of these facts are what came from PBS's website, and I thought they were just awesome. Was that like the golden age was like they say the cementation of the comic as a mainstream art form with its own defined language and creative conventions. I thought that was awesome. I love that. Like when I read that at the end of at the end of this like site, I was like, wow, that's so cool because like you got to think about it. Like if comics went from like Egyptian times as art on the walls to eventually with the printing press into like the newspapers, then eventually into books. It is an art form. It's just grown over time to be something more, and that right there, it just like it shows you. And I'm going back to this because I could beat this like a dead horse. Is that you should have respect for the older comics, guys. Like even if you don't love them, just respect them. You know, like just respect and acknowledge that they're there and that it happened. Batman wasn't always this the moral Cape Crusader that he is today.
And Superman wasn't always the big blue Boy Scout that he's stereotyped to be now.
Yeah, you just got to look at it that way and just say, hey, like I respect that. I may not like enjoy reading those because they're different, but I still respect that they're there, and that's what matters. Like it shows that comic books, like most things, are built on a foundation, and that foundation has grown over the years.
Oh yeah, I mean I don't know if you've also been caught up on Comic Book Men. I watched, I think it was 2 episodes ago. They were talking about their bucket list. It was the first episode of the season. That's what it was. So it was after the Walking Dead premiere. But they talked about like their bucket lists, and Walt Flanagan actually said something on his bucket list is to be in the presence, like be at least up close, like from your hand to your face of Action Comics #1, not a reprint, an actual copy of Action Comics #1.
That's an awesome.
And they said, you know what? Hey, there's a place like a museum in Baltimore that does a lot of that stuff. So now I have to go to Baltimore, guys.
Yeah. All right. Well, trip to Baltimore, guys. I think that's gonna happen.
So basically, they went in there and they were talking to the owner. And lucky enough, Walt was joking around with him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this is what would be even better is if I could smell it." And the guys were making fun of him, like, "Oh, why would you smell a comic? That's weird." And then all of a sudden, the owner gets on him. They were like, "No, I agree with him. There's like something about that. It's like he called him like an oldie or something like that. I forget what they called him, but there's like something about that. Like if you're a really hardcore comic book fan, the way the comic smells."
Dude, I totally agree with Walt. Yeah. Because I walk into a comic store, and the first thing I do, and my girlfriend always gets on me about this, and she like loves it, is I take a deep inhale, and then I'm like, I felt at home. I feel like a little kid again. And I just every time I walk in, and I could walk in, it could be my 47th time in the store, and I would still do the same thing.
So the best part is the owner, because he and Walt apparently got along. I'm guessing also because he was being filmed and like he's like famous, stuff like that. He let him open the book. Like he took the book out of the case, opened it, and let him smell it from like right in the center where the staples are.
God.
So he actually pretty much touched and smelled Action Comics #1.
Just cross it off your bucket list. He did it.
Yeah.
Hey man, he got his wish. I like stuff. I love Comic Book Men for that. They do a lot of cool stuff like that. I enjoy it.
So with that, I guess we're gonna have to end it here. It's 59, guys. So with that, thank you again as always for joining us. This has been Geek Week with Chris and Nick. Once again,
I'm Kristen Talley,
and I'm Nick Rotundo.
We started up a YouTube channel to post all of our old videos, plus more to come, like weekly video updates, hopefully in the near future.
Yes. Last week we know Chris was sick, unfortunately. Feeling better. I like to see that. So we're back. Hopefully last week's episode for the weekly updates gets edited at some point this week and uploaded on YouTube as well.
And be sure to just subscribe and share with all your friends and family, like whoever enjoys comic books, you don't enjoy comic books, whatever. You want to hear a bunch of two nerds like ranting, go ahead. But yeah, so the YouTube account has been shared on our Facebook page, so be sure to go like us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/geekweek885.
And tune in next week to hear us talk about the Silver Age of comic books.
That was Geek Week with Chris and Nick. Be sure to tune in next week at 6 p.m.